Continue the matter of Amanda Hayes. You can bring her in, please. Thank you. I don't. I don't know if we have in that file a copy of the book.
Multiple files, but I'll do one.
Those orders. Just show that we had it here. That the court manager appointed counsel in the case, and we'll revisit conditions of the trial release at the next time. All right, folks, I think we're back in session now, and the defendant and counsel are present. Sheriff, can you bring the jurors in, please? Thank you. Okay. Please come around. Ms. Swan, there's a Bible there. Put your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand, remain standing, please.
Do you promise your testimony to give this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
Ma'am, could you state your name?
Field Agent Tracy Tremlett.
Agent Tremlett, how are you employed?
I am a certified crime scene investigator for the City County Bureau of Identification.
What's the City County Bureau of Identification?
We are an agency that supplies forensic services for agencies within Wake County.
And what's your role with CCBI?
I'm a crime scene investigator.
And what does a crime scene investigator do?
We respond to scenes, we observe, we document the scenes, and that can include videotaping, 360 camera, digital camera, sketching. Then we also process the scene for fingerprints, DNA, blood, hair, fibers.
How long have you been with CCBI?
Just a little over 6 years.
And prior to working with CCBI, did you have any law enforcement experience or training?
I was a police officer in Rocky Mount for 10 years.
I believe you discussed processing crime scenes. What do you mean when agent processes a crime scene?
It entails, depending on the circumstances of the crime that we get called to, We can look for latent evidence, which is to include fingerprints, and we also do blood, DNA, and hair.
And how do you go about trying to find that latent evidence?
There's different procedures that we use, just depending on the circumstances.
Okay. Well, were you called out as part of your duties with CCBI back on July 20th of 2011?
Yes, sir.
And that was the early morning hours of a Wednesday.
Yes, sir.
Do you recall what time you got out to the scene?
I got there at 4:15 a.m.
And where did you go at 4:15 a.m.?
I went to Cameron Crest Circle at Summit Manor Lane.
And do you know why you'd been called there?
First, I got put in for a request for service, and it was for photos and fingerprints. When I got on scene and spoke to the detective that was there, he informed me that he was assisting Kinston Police Department reference a missing person case that they were working.
And when you got there, were you notified that the missing person, Laura Ackerson's car, had just been found that morning?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you see that car there?
Yes, sir.
And Your Honor, can I publish State's Exhibit 33 this time?
You may.
Is that the car that you were called upon to process?
Yes, sir.
And did you find out that that had been Laura Ackerson's car?
That it was registered to her, yes.
As part of your investigation into that vehicle, did you take some pictures of that car?
Yes, sir. I took pictures of the inside and outside.
Okay. Your Honor, can I approach the witness?
You may.
Just have the first couple. Thank you. Agent Chumlin, I hand you has been marked and entered already as State's Exhibit 33, 34, and 35. Are those pictures you took that morning?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, with respect to State's Exhibits 46 through 57, could you look through these and indicate if you recognize those?
Yes, sir.
And are those all pictures that you took back on the early morning hours of July 20th, 2011?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, at this time, the State would move to enter State's Exhibit 46 through 57.
Let me receive.
Your Honor, can I publish those at this time?
You may.
And Detective, I'm sorry, Agent, I show you State's Exhibit 46. Is this a zoomed-in picture of the car door?
The driver's door.
Okay. Let me go back to State's Exhibit 34, which has previously been admitted. Is this how you found the car in that parking space?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you document the weather when you got there?
Yes, sir.
And what was the temperature?
It was clear and 77 degrees.
So it hadn't rained that night at all?
Not that I recall.
So what's the first thing after you take all the pictures? What's the first thing that you do to process the car?
I actually look at the outside of the car to check the surfaces of what I'm looking at printing. What I noticed about this car is the door handles were of a texture, and just from me doing my job, I know that the chance of me getting a fingerprint off that surface is slim to none
Okay.
because of them being distorted.
I'll show you State's Exhibit 46. I guess this is State's Exhibit 47. Is that the material that you were talking about is difficult to get a fingerprint off of?
Yes, sir. If it has any kind of texture to it, the print, if there is one there, gets distorted from the texture that it's on.
What about a car door, the rest of the car door, the windows? Are those easier places to get fingerprints off of?
Yes, sir.
In fact, do you often find fingerprints on car doors?
Yes, sir.
And could you briefly describe how it is that you attempt to see or take a fingerprint off of a car?
So I look for the clear surface. The powder we use is a combination of magnetic powder and volcanic ash. And the powder we use is attracted to moisture. Fingerprints are made up of 98% water and 2% fats and amino acids. So the powder that we use is attached to it and actually enhance the print that you may not be able to see just with your eye. Sometimes if you hold the flashlight at an angle on the surface, you'll be able to see it, but once you put that powder on, if there's a print there, the powder actually enhances to where it's clear that you can see it.
On the exterior of this vehicle, the missing person, Laura Ackerson's vehicle, were you able to get any fingerprints off the exterior of that vehicle?
No, sir.
Is that rare?
Well, yes and no. A lot of the times, if there's activity there, there's going to, even it may not be a clear print, but they would show some kind of activity, swipe marks, or something on the outside.
Sure. So if I was closing that door and I moved my hand across it quickly, you would see some sort of mark. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you looked on the exterior of this car, did you find any marks whatsoever?
No, sir.
What does that mean to you?
It appeared to me that the vehicle had been wiped down.
Did you then investigate the interior of this car?
Yes, sir.
I'll show you State's Exhibit 48. State's Exhibit 48, is that how you found the car?
Yes, sir.
And did you attempt to process any of the interior of the car?
I did the where you see the white of the inside of the door frame on the outside, all along the top where it was metal from the car, down the right there near the A-frame part of the door.
If I could stop you for a second.
I'm sorry.
There's a laser pointer up there.
Oh.
Button on it.
So I did all here, and there's a little piece right here that's metal, right above the seal, and this part of the frame of the door here, and I also did the inside of the window here.
Were you able to get any latent evidence off of that?
I did get one off the interior of the driver's door.
Additionally, while you were searching that vehicle, did you find something on the exterior door handle on the driver's side?
No, but I did I collected a touch DNA sample from the door handle.
Okay. Did you find a hair somewhere on the exterior of that car?
Yes, sir, on the outside of the driver's door.
Could you tell if that was an animal hair or a person hair?
I don't recall.
Okay. Moving on and looking at State's Exhibit 49, is this the interior of the vehicle?
Yes, sir.
And could you tell, did it appear that the driver's seat was, I guess, far enough back from the steering wheel so that a person could sit in that car?
Yes, sir.
Could you tell if it was far enough back for someone who is 5'9" to sit there?
It seemed like it was a little closer than that.
And the passenger seat, was that, it appears in this picture that it was moved back further than the driver's seat?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what did you find inside that car?
There was a styrofoam cup, which is located right here in the cup holder, and a takeout food tray in the floorboard of the front passenger seat.
And how did you process the interior of that vehicle?
I processed all of the driver's controls, which would include the headlight lever, the turn signal lever, the gear shift. There's a rearview mirror up here, and the inside of the door, the stereo, and that's it.
And Could you tell the jury where you were able to find latent evidence in those areas that you processed?
I've got fingerprints off the interior of the right rear passenger door, which is the door that is behind the passenger seat. I also got prints off of the takeout plate, which is in the floorboard here, on the top and the bottom of the takeout plate.
Agent, I show you State's Exhibit 56. Is that the passenger side door?
Yes, sir.
And is that that takeout plate that you're referring to?
Yes, sir, right there.
Show you State's Exhibit 51. Is that the back seat of that vehicle?
Yes, sir. I call that the left rear passenger door.
Is this the driver's door or the passenger door?
It's the passenger door behind the driver's seat.
Okay. And so you're able to take latent prints from the driver's door, styrofoam cup, and the takeout plate?
And the right rear passenger door.
Agent, were you made aware of whether those latent prints that you found, whether those were of sufficient value to be compared?
I believe there were 2 out of the 5 that were placed in for comparison.
Your approach witness. I handed you the marked for identification purposes of State's Exhibit A58, A59, and A60. What are these?
These are evidence envelopes that we at CCBI seal evidence in.
Okay. And looking at those and the writing on the outside of them, are those evidence envelopes that pertain to this case?
Yes, sir.
And what are inside those envelopes?
Touch DNA samples.
And where did you get those touch DNA samples from?
I took one from the exterior door handle of the driver's door, the exterior door handle of the front passenger door, and the steering wheel and gear shift lever.
And are those inside those 3? I guess, could you tell the jury what State's Exhibit 58, which touch DNA sample is that from?
58 is the touch DNA sample from the exterior door handle of the driver's door.
And State's Exhibit 59, or A59?
Is from the exterior door handle of the front passenger door.
And where is A60 from?
The steering wheel and gear shift lever.
This time I'm moving evidence State's Exhibit A58 through A60.
No, very soon.
How do you get to get the touch DNA sample? How do you go about getting those samples?
I use a sterile swab, cotton swab, and use distilled water. I put a few droplets on the swab and then rub the swab over the surface to be tested or to be collected.
And after you got those, is that what you put into the box that's inside those envelopes?
Yes, sir. It's a little white rectangle box.
After you, I guess, took those touch DNA swabs from the car and processed the car for fingerprints, did you do anything else?
Yes, sir. We observed an unknown substance on the interior of the trunk lid.
And if I could show you State's Exhibit 57. I'm sorry. 53. Is this the trunk of that vehicle?
Yes, sir.
And could you describe where you found that substance?
It doesn't show it, but it's up underneath the trunk lid.
Okay. Does that appear to be some sort of tricycle in the trunk?
Yes, sir.
And you're saying above the tricycle on the interior ceiling of the trunk?
Of the lid of
the
the
lid of the
the lid of the trunk.
Okay. What was that? What did that substance appear to be to you?
We weren't sure, so I tested it with a chemical that we use out in the field.
And what chemical was that?
Phenolphthalein.
Okay. And why do you test it with that chemical?
Phenolphthalein actually reacts with the hemoglobin in the blood, and it also would give us a negative or positive reaction for the presence of blood.
And did that test give, what did that test reveal to you?
It was negative.
Actually, you states Exhibit 50. Is this the, again, interior of that vehicle?
Yes, sir.
Did you see any other spots in the interior of that vehicle that you wanted to test that phenolphthalein to determine if there was presence of blood?
No, sir.
So you states Exhibit 52. Is this another view of the back seat?
Yes, sir.
States Exhibit 54. Is that again the inside of that trunk?
Yes, sir.
This is States Exhibit 55. Are there two child seats in the back of that car?
Yes, sir.
And then States Exhibit 56. I think we looked at it. That shows that takeout plate.
Yes, sir.
And States 57. Is there also a menu inside that car?
Yes, sir.
Agent, after you processed the interior of that car, did that conclude your testing on this vehicle?
Yes, sir.
And going back to the exterior of the car, as part of your work, do you attempt to get fingerprints off of all sorts of different materials?
Anything that I can, yes.
So if you're called out to a scene of a break and you might try to get fingerprints off a window or wood or part of a door.
Yes, sir.
How would you rate a car exterior on a list of all the materials that you look at in terms of general easiness to get a fingerprint off of?
Easy.
Okay. And in this car, you said it appeared that it had been wiped off. What do you mean by wiped off?
There was just no activity on the car at all, not even from just general use of, getting in and out of the car.
If I was to close a car door, if that might have my fingerprints on the exterior of the car?
More than likely, yes.
And then if I took some sort of cloth or anything and rubbed where my hand touched, that would prevent you from being able to find that latent evidence?
Yes, sir.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Any questions?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Do I call you Detective Tremlett?
Agent Tremlett?
Agent Tremlett.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. The first thing that you do when you get to a scene, whatever it is, a car, a house, whatever, you take photographs, right?
First we observe and kind of look around first, and then we do take photographs to document it.
And that's for the very purpose of coming to court if you have to, and being able to say, this is exactly the way this appeared on a particular day.
Yes, sir.
If there's ever any question about what was there, what was not there, you can always go look at the photograph, right?
Yes, sir.
So when you get there, you take the photographs and then you proceed to do the fingerprint.
I took the photographs first, then I did the touch DNA on the door handles, and then I processed for the fingerprints.
Okay, so do you do the things to the exterior before you open the car and look in it to see what might be in there?
Yeah, it's less intrusive.
So, okay, so you do the touch DNA from the touch DNA first.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I believe you indicate, well, let me back up here for a moment. The first thing that seemed to attract your attention was that the car seemed to have been wiped down, I believe you said.
Yes, sir.
Are there any tests that you can do to determine what substance might have been used to wipe the car down with?
No, sir.
For example, if someone just wiping it with a cloth, or they wiping it with a cleaning material, is there anything to give you any clue on how that was done?
No, sir.
It's just clean.
Yes.
Okay, so which indicates to you that something has been done, or you'd be finding a little more than what you're finding.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I believe you indicated that on the DNA samples, you find some touch DNA from the driver's door, from the front passenger door, and from the steering wheel. Did you say the steering wheel and the gear shift? Or?
Yes, sir. It's not that I found it. It's not visible. So the touch DNA, if there was to be DNA there, the sample that we get would have to be later sent off to be tested against a known sample. It's not that I actually saw the touch DNA because it's not visible. You can't see it.
Okay, so you're taking a sample and then submitting it to someone?
Because yes, sir, because it was of a surface that I knew that I wouldn't be able to get prints off of.
Okay. Now, I noticed you've only taken 3 samples. Is there a reason for only taking 3, or do you take 60 or 100 sometimes?
It's optional. I was just taking where I would think would be the main source of, getting in and out of the vehicle.
Okay, I understand. Now, the next thing you did was fingerprint the exterior of the car,
Yes, sir.
right?
hmm
Now, fingerprint pattern is a magnetic pattern, isn't it?
The one that I used that night, it's a combination of volcanic ash and magnetic powder.
It's pretty messy substance, isn't it?
It can be.
In other words, when you finish your job,
You know
got
I've been
a
there.
car that's covered with things that you don't want to be brushing up against because it's going to ruin your clothes. So,
It can.
am I right?
Yeah.
Now, tell me where you indicated you find some fingerprints on the exterior of the car someplace.
None on the exterior.
None on the exterior.
No, sir.
But where did you find fingerprints?
I found the inside of the right rear passenger door, which is the back passenger door behind the front passenger.
Okay.
The inside of the driver's door, the styrofoam cup, and one on the top of the food container and one on the bottom of the food container.
Okay. Now, of course, you don't do the testing to determine whose fingerprints they are, do you?
No, we have latent examiners that do that.
Now, you noticed in this vehicle there were car seats in both of the back seats, correct?
Yes, sir.
And one of the fingerprints that you found was on the rear door next to what I call the passenger rear door on the inside next to the car seat, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Are you aware that the children, Grant and Gentle, are taken each Friday afternoon to the Sheetz gas station in Wilson where they are exchanged, where custody is exchanged with their mother?
I wasn't aware of that at the time.
Do you know that now?
Just from testimony, yeah, that I sat in earlier.
Okay, so your job isn't to do the investigation, your job is to collect the evidence.
Yes, sir.
So if there is an exchange of custody occurring every Friday and every Sunday involving these 2 children, then you would expect that the people involved in the exchange of the custody would leave their fingerprints in or around the area of the car seat,
Of the car seat?
of the car seats, the rear door next to the car seat.
Sure, whoever puts the kids in and out of the car.
They're going to leave their fingerprints somewhere around there, aren't they?
Possibly.
And well, frankly, you would expect to find fingerprints in or around the area of the car seats, wouldn't you?
Yes, sir.
Did I understand? I'm not looking at the photographs now, so I'm trying to recall where the different items were. I seem to recall that there were 2 water bottles in the driver's door, front driver's door.
Yes, sir.
And did you fingerprint those?
I did not.
Did you attempt to obtain any DNA from those bottles?
No, sir.
Aren't those bottles something that you would expect to find fingerprints or DNA on?
Yes, sir.
But you didn't do that?
No, sir.
I believe you said that you did find a fingerprint on the styrofoam cup that we saw between the two seats?
Yes, sir.
And again, I take it that you're not the person that knows the answer to who that fingerprint belonged to?
No, sir.
Did you find any fingerprints from the menu that was laying on the front passenger seat?
No, sir.
Did you try?
No, sir.
But you did you find anything on the tray that was laying in the, food tray that was laying in the seat
Yes, sir.
or in the
Floorboard.
I seem to recall seeing something else laying down there too. What was that?
I believe it was just the tray.
Just a tray?
It was a foil tray with like a cardboard top.
Okay, so it was one item, but two pieces to the same item?
Yeah, and the metal goes around the sides.
Do you recall which piece of the item you found the fingerprint from?
Both.
You found two fingerprints?
Yes, sir.
One from the top and one from the bottom?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You also indicated that the driver's seat was pulled forward, indicating that someone perhaps smaller than 5'8" had last driven the car.
Yes, sir. It was up close to the steering wheel.
Do you know how tall Grant Hayes is?
I overheard 5'5", maybe, in the testimony today.
Do we have a match here?
I can't make that determination.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. How do you move that seat forward? Is there a button down here by the side, or is there a rail underneath the seat? Do you know?
I'm not sure for that model car.
Did you make any effort to determine whether there were fingerprints or touch DNA on the mechanism that's used to move the car seat forward?
No, sir. And can I add something? At the time that I got called to this, it was just a missing person. So I assumed that everything in the vehicle possibly belonged to the victim. So I just want to add that.
I see. So you weren't called to a homicide investigation?
No, sir. I was actually called for a request for service, and all it was at the time was for prints and photographs. And when I got there is when I was informed it was, a possible, it was a missing person out of Kinston.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing you say, you correct me if I'm wrong, is that if you had known that this was a homicide investigation, you would have perhaps been more thorough in your examination.
Absolutely.
You indicated that nowhere on the vehicle did you find anything that tested positive for phenolphthalein, indicating blood.
No, I did not.
But something drew your attention to a substance in the trunk that you thought might be blood, but turned out not to be blood. Could you describe what it was that got your attention?
It was red in color, and that just kind of puts a little light bulb off.
you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Anything else?
Briefly, Agent, you're asking questions about these car seats in the back. Are there hundreds of variables that could prevent a fingerprint from being taken off the car seats?
Can you repeat that for me?
Those car seats in the back, you're asked about fingerprints off those. Are there hundreds of variables that could keep you from getting a clear fingerprint off the car seats?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The weather, humidity, somebody rubbed against it, things like that.
The texture, anything. And a lot of people's fingerprints, I'm a good example. I can touch a surface and I don't leave, I leave some activity there, but not a definite. So it all just depends on a lot of things.
You're looking at this car as part of a missing person investigation?
Yes, sir.
So if you're looking at this and believe the person was kidnapped out of the car, you look for some signs of distress or anything along those lines?
Yes, sir.
The water bottles didn't really factor in the equation then, did they?
No, sir.
They don't really factor in the equation now, do they?
No, sir.
You were asked about the seats being pulled up. Do you know if a 5'9" person could fit in where the seat was pulled up, or do you know that only a 5'5" person can fit there?
I don't know either way.
Thank you. Nothing further.
All right.
May I just ask one other thing, I'm gonna need one of the photographs back on the screen if we can do that. Sure. Mr. Zellinger, you may know the number better than I. I'd like to bring up the photograph of the right passenger door with the car seat. You indicated that you find a fingerprint somewhere around the door area of this right rear door, am I correct?
On the inside, yes, sir.
Can you see the spot here, or is it?
I would need to look at the Leighton card that I collected. We draw diagrams on the back, and I'd be able to let you know exactly where the fingerprint was. I don't recall just looking at the door.
Do you know where those Leighton fingerprint cards are now?
No, sir, I don't. Maybe back at CCBI, I'm not sure.
So you don't know. As we're looking at this photograph, what I'm seeing is where the door is fully open, but it's not showing the corner where you would grab the door in order to open it.
Yeah, I don't recall the exact location of where I collected the print
Recall
from.
the location of the fingerprint.
On the back of our cards, all we put is the location, and then we draw a more descriptive diagram, and we exit and exactly where we got it, just for future references, like for court, because we handle, several calls, within a year, so it's good to have the diagram there that we can say, yes, this is exactly where I collected this print from. Because as soon as I collect it and put it on the card, I draw the diagram and, illustrate it on the back of the card.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Anything else?
Briefly, all this material that you gather, the lit cards and the touch DNA, what do you do with that stuff after you look at the car?
The lift cards are submitted to our Leighton section at CCBI for analysis and for storage there. Any physical evidence that we collect, seeing that this actually turned into a homicide, another case agent with CCBI was assigned to the case as the primary. And so in that case, so there's not too many pokers in the fire, all the evidence that was collected for this was forwarded to the lead agent.
And who is the lead agent in this case?
Shannon Quick.
Okay, so everything, the lift cards, all this stuff goes to one person. All the results of the examinations go to one person.
Just the physical evidence goes to the lead, and then the late evidence goes to the Leighton section. And then we also have a forensic photographer where the photographs go to there into a system.
But the lead agent, CCBI agent on this case is Shannon.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Nothing further.
All right, thank you, ma'am. You're excused. Thank you. Call your next witness.
State calls Keith Heckman.
All right.
That person.
You may. Thank you. sworn, please.
These times with testimony you give this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I swear.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
Sir, could you state your name for the record?
Detective Keith Heckman.
And how are you employed?
I'm employed as a detective with the Raleigh Police Department.
How long have you been a detective with the Raleigh Police Department?
Going on 13 years.
And prior to working with Raleigh, did you have any other law enforcement experience?
I did. I worked with the Goldsboro Police Department in Wayne County for about a year and a half.
And currently at the Raleigh Police Department, to what unit are you assigned?
I'm a detective assigned to the TABRU unit, which is the Technical Assistance Response Unit.
And that technical assistance response unit, what sort of responsibilities do you have as a detective with that unit?
We primarily do undercover surveillance, fugitive apprehension. We work with phone companies tracking fugitives' movements prior to and after crimes committed. We're also responsible for installation and monitoring of overt and covert camera systems.
Do you have any specialized training to be able to perform that that role with the Raleigh Police Department?
I do. I'm a member of the NATIA, which is a National Technical Investigative Association. NATIA provides training for full-time sworn law enforcement officers that are assigned these duties on phone analysis, tracking methods, surveillance, covert and overt video systems as well. So training through them annually and also quarterly. We do on-the-job training as well. And I'm assigned with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Safe Streets Task Force, where we receive training through them.
Back in the summer of 2011, were you assigned to that unit in that role with the Raleigh Police Department?
Yes, sir.
And at some point, did you get involved in the case of investigating a missing person, Laura Ackerson?
I did.
And when was it that you first got involved?
Around July 19th.
Okay, and that was a Tuesday, is that correct?
I'm not sure, but I believe it is.
When you first got, how did you first become involved in the case?
Well, we were briefed that there was a missing person, and we were asked to look into some of the phone records for her and additionally 2 other people.
And who is the missing person that you were looking for?
Laura Ackerson.
Okay. Can I approach the witness?
You may.
Detective, I give you has been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit A78. Do you recognize that document?
I do.
And what is that document?
These are T-Mobile phone records, call detail records.
And how do you detectives, as part of your investigation, send search warrants to these companies to get these phone records?
We do. We usually send court orders to the phone companies for the production of the records.
And what phone number is that State's Exhibit A78 for?
These are T-Mobile records for T-Mobile phone number, area code 252-548.
And was that information that you had was the victim in this case, Laura Ackerson's phone number?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, this time I move to enter State's Exhibit A78.
Let me proceed.
Your Honor, may I publish that at this time?
You may.
Madam Clerk. Now, Detective, we're looking at a whole bunch of information in this call record. This first column that appears, column A, is that the phone number that you were looking for?
Correct. That's the phone number for the phone records that were produced.
And then this column B, it says event type SMS or voice. What is an SMS?
SMS is going to be your text messages, and voice is going to be a voice telephone call.
The start time, is that the start time of the phone call or text message?
That's the date and the timestamp, correct, of the phone call.
And this connected to column, is that the number that the person was calling?
Right. Yes, sir.
Some of this other information, I guess over here on row K and L, the first LAC and first cell, what does that information pertain to?
That's telling us when the phone made a phone call or received a phone call. It's telling us what tower that phone was using and what side of the tower that phone was on when the call was completed or terminated.
Okay. And so that information is coded so that you know geographically where the tower was?
Right. The T-Mobile or any phone company would provide us with a database that's listing where their towers are, what the address is, what the latitude and longitude is, and then they also tell us if the tower has 3 sides, what sides or what direction the sides face in service.
I'll move this forward to July 13th of 2011. I guess additionally, columns N and O, those were listed as the last cell site. What does that mean?
Well, it gives you a first cell site and a last cell site. If you're making a phone call and you're in one place and you start your phone call, it's going to tell you what tower your phone was on when the call was started. If you didn't move, more than likely your call is going to end on that same tower. So the first and the last should remain the same. To the contrary, if you're driving down Highway 95 and you make a phone call, when you push send and start your phone call, it may initiate on a tower, say by exit 312. As you drive and talk on the phone for 30 minutes, when you go to hang up, it's going to tell you the call was terminated on a different tower that could be 30 miles north from where you started.
I draw your attention to line number 991 that's, I guess, at the top of this page. Does that appear to be a voice phone call from which you knew to be Laura Ackerson's phone number at 4:18 p.m. on July 13th of 2011?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And could you read in column E, is the number that it was calling 919-334-8949?
Yes, sir. It was outgoing call to that phone number.
And did you have some information that that was Oksana Samarski's cell phone number?
I did not know who that number belonged to at the time.
I guess as part of your investigation of this, were you asked to plot 2 phone calls?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this 418 phone call was one of the ones that you're asked to plot?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. So, Detective, looking at this phone call on 418, from this you can discern that Laura Ackerson's phone number called this other phone number at 4:18 p.m.?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay. And then this information at the end gives you the cell phone tower information for it?
Correct.
Your Honor, can I approach the witness?
You may.
Actually, it's been marked as State's Exhibit A81 and A82. Specifically for State's Exhibit A81, is this a map you made using the cell phone tower location from that phone call?
It is.
Okay. And showing you State's Exhibit A82, is this a cell phone tower map that you made from a phone call that occurred at 4:59 p.m.?
Yes, sir.
Are both of these made based off of the information that was contained in that cell phone record?
Correct. They're maps that I produced based off the information provided by the call detail records.
Your Honor, this time I move to enter into evidence State's Exhibit A81 and A82.
Let them be received.
Detective, before we get to those maps, on this phone call that we're looking at on line 991, there's cell tower information listed for the first and last cell tower for that call.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay. About halfway down this page at line number 997, is there a phone call at 4:59 p.m.?
There is.
Okay. And is that from what you believe to be Laura Ackerson's phone number to a 917-744-7651?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that, I believe a prior witness has correlated that with Amanda Hayes' phone that the Grant Hayes sometimes used. Is that the information that you have?
Yes, sir.
Okay. After that phone call, is there any other activity on this cell phone record that shows that the user of the phone was instigating any phone call?
No, because if you go back up a little bit, if you look at K and L, row K and L, column K and L, it's going to give you the cell tower and the side of the tower that was being used. After that call, you see zeros, which is representative that calls may have come into that phone but were not answered. So that cell phone itself never hit off of any towers from that point on.
So there's zeros all the way through the page, which indicate that that cell phone never connected?
Correct.
And sometimes if someone called this phone number and it got forwarded to voicemail, could that appear to be an outgoing call on the cell phone record?
The call would come in, it would show it's an incoming call, and then it would immediately reroute to a voicemail routed number.
For
And-
instance, on July 14th at 11:21 a.m., there appears to be an incoming call from this number that ends in 6831, and then there's an immediate outgoing call to an 805 number.
Correct, that's just a voicemail routing number.
And on all these phone calls where there's an incoming call, instantly there's an outgoing call to that voicemail number?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But still, there's no tower activity, so that indicates to you that there's no person using that phone at that time?
Right. Had somebody been actually using that phone, making an outbound call, then there would be tower information associated or shown in columns K and L. Or if somebody calls and that phone is answered, that phone would then attach to a tower to service that call, and then it would show tower information.
So for instance, on this column 1016 on July 14th at 3:07 p.m., that same phone number that ends in 7651 that's previously been identified as Grant or Amanda's phone, that phone number called 1714, which is information you had was Laura Ackerson's number.
That's correct.
Okay. And it instantly went to voicemail.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And 2 hours later at 5:19 p.m. on July 14th, again, there's a phone call coming into this Laura Ackerson's phone number from Amanda and Grant's phone number.
Correct.
Going back to the date of July 13th, the last phone call on here that's outgoing from Laura Ackerson's phone number, that 1714 phone, is that going to, again, that 917-744-7651 number?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that occurred at what time, looking at these records?
4:59 p.m.
And I'll show you what I believe is State's Exhibit. Do you have the maps in front of you?
Yes, sir, I do.
The one for the 4:18 p.m. call, I believe it's State's Exhibit A81. May I publish that at this time?
You may.
And this is the outgoing call from Laura Ackerson's phone on July 13th at 4:18 p.m. to this 894 number.
Correct.
894 number. And can you describe to the jury what we're looking at with this map?
Okay, this map was produced based off the phone records that T-Mobile provided for the call at that time. And what it's telling us is when that call was initiated, that the phone was on cell tower 38228, which is, it's considered what T-Mobile calls it a LAC, which is a location area code.
Okay, so to stop you there, so that phone number on AT&T or whoever cell phone provider was, their records tell you that that phone tower is at this geographical location?
Correct.
Okay, and so that's marked in the center of this circle?
Right.
And then I believe earlier you mentioned that cell phone towers have sides. How many sides do cell phone towers have?
Most typically, cell phone towers have 3 sides.
And does this specific cell phone tower, does this have 3 sides?
It does, yes, sir.
And how do you know which side of the tower the cell phone is on?
You have the 2 columns, the LAC and the SID. The LAC is going to tell you what tower it is. That LAC is indicated by the red push pin in the center of the circle. The SID is going to tell you what side it's on. And the way you determine that, it'll tell you the SID for that side has a azimuth, or the center of that piece of the pie is 270 degrees. So in order for me to determine where the phone was when it was making that call, I know that 270 degrees is the center of it. So if I stood up to the back of that cell tower, and I put my arms out for 120 degrees, so I can know that the phone would be from the tower and 120 degrees out.
Okay, so
To
to
the
break down
west.
that geometry, I guess, each third of the cell phone tower should be 120 degrees,
Correct.
right?
Yes, sir.
And so you don't know how the cell phone towers are divided, and that gives you a code that tells you the middle degree of where that 120 degrees is centered.
Right. They call it the azimuth, just telling me where the middle of that sector is, and it's 60 degrees to the left and 60 degrees to the right would give us the 120-degree footprint that that phone was on during the call.
So for this phone call for 4:18 p.m., you knew that the azimuth or the middle of that sector was 270 degrees?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And from that, you can tell that the angle of the side of the cell phone tower where this cell phone was?
Correct.
And so here we have a circle. If you were outside the circle, for instance, where the cursor was, would this still be on this side of this tower?
If it was outside of that circle, it would likely be picked up by the next servicing cell tower to the
Okay.
west.
And is that how those circles almost overlap, and that's how you have comprehensive cellular service everywhere you go?
Correct. Yeah, the tower service areas would overlap. So if you're driving through that area, through the yellow shaded area, and you start hitting the edge of it and entering the next cell tower, that tower would recognize you, it would have the stronger signal, and the phone would do what's called a handoff from one tower to the other. If you're ever driving down the street and all of a sudden you have a failed call, that's usually indicative of the next tower not being ready or the next tower not having a strong enough signal to accept the handoff.
And the cellular provider records which side of the tower you're on when you first make the call,
Yes, sir.
and the last one, as you mentioned earlier.
Correct.
Okay, so for this phone call at 4:18 p.m., you know that the user of that phone is somewhere in that yellow shaded area?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this is just outside of Wilson, North Carolina?
Correct.
And that shaded area actually overlaps 264?
264 and 795.
Okay. And if you go west on this, does it eventually take you back to 64 to Raleigh?
Yes, sir.
And you also noted that the phone call was 0.63 duration.
Right, and I have seconds up there. That would be an error. It's 0.63 minute duration with T-Mobile.
I believe the jury's heard the voice recording of this phone call. So that would be 0.6 of a minute.
Correct.
Okay. And I'll show you State's Exhibit A82. This is for this last phone call, the last activity on line 97, is that right? 997?
997, yes, sir.
And that's at 4:59, and after that, this phone falls silent and there's never any activity on it again. Is that
Correct. Yes, sir.
Showing you State's Exhibit A82. Is this again a map of where that cell phone was when that last call occurred?
Yes, sir.
And that shaded area reveals which side of the tower the cell phone was on?
Right, it's telling us that it was on Sector 1, and that Sector 1 has a orientation or azimuth of 0 or 360. So we know that that tower, the first side, is pointing due north. They call it Sector A. Sector A equates to Sector 1 as well.
Okay. And that sector on this map includes, I guess, part of Glenwood Avenue and right where it intersects with the Beltline 440?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this is actually where Crabtree Valley Mall is?
Correct.
And the actual tower is located sort of on the hill above Crabtree?
Right, Arrow Drive, which is just, you take a left off of Glenwood Avenue coming from 440.
And that last phone call from Laura Ackerson's phone was to this 7651 number that's been identified as Amanda Grant's phone.
Yes, sir.
And that was a duration of 1.97 minutes?
Right.
Okay. So that was almost a 2-minute phone call?
Correct.
Now, in addition to that phone, did you also attempt to locate where that 7651 number was located?
We did.
And this is on the early morning hours or afternoon of July 19th or 20th.
Correct.
Can I come first with us?
You may.
Hand you the marks for identification purposes is Stacy with an A79. Could you look at that? What is that?
These are AT&T call detail records.
Okay. And those call detail records, are those for the phone number 917-744-7651?
Yes, sir.
And are they also for another phone number that is 917?
There you go. Towards the bottom.
Are those also some call records for 917-744-8581?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Stacy's Exhibit A79 contains both those records.
Correct.
Okay. Your Honor, this time I move to enter Stacy's Exhibit A79.
Let her say.
And before you get to those, did you also attempt to, well, let me show you Stacy's Exhibit A80. What is that document?
This is the email that I sent from my email to Detective Barry Falk, relaying a position of the phone, its location, that is time and date stamp.
How do you, I guess before we get to the A79, for Stacy's Exhibit A80, how do you get that information of where the phone is located?
Sure, we send a court order to AT&T. All phone companies are pretty much different in what information they provide. AT&T is one company that can provide mobile locates on your phone. And subject to a court order with probable cause, they can tell you where a phone is at by sending you an email every 15 minutes. When the email comes in, it'll usually tell you the lat and long of that handset or that telephone, the date and time stamp of when that position was obtained, and then what they call certainty factor, or the radius of how big of an area they think that phone is going to be located within.
And did you do that for, at this point, this is a missing persons case when you first get involved, is that
Right.
correct?
Yes, sir.
And detectives asked you to find a location of this 917-744-8581 handset?
Yes, sir.
And they also asked you to get location information of 917-744-7651.
Correct.
Say it again. I'm sorry.
I'm
lost
sorry.
that. Say it one more time. Second one.
917-744-7651. And that was the phone number that Laura's last phone call went to, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
And so you attempted to figure out where that handset was located
Yes, sir.
by doing a court order for both of those phone numbers?
Correct.
And does your phone have to be on in order to get one of those, for AT&T to be able to geolocate your phone?
It does. When AT&T sends a signal out to the handset at a 15-minute interval, if the phone is not on at the time, then it will come back with unable to locate it. It'll tell us that the phone is unable to be located. If the phone is on, it should return a position with a certainty factor.
That email that you have before you, is that the information that you acquired from AT&T and forwarded on to Detective Falk?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, this time I move to enter Stacy's at A80.
Let her say.
I'm sorry, what was that number?
80, A80.
A80?
80. A80. Sorry. And before you are, those phone records that we spoke of for the 7651 number and the 8581 number, are those the records that you received from AT&T?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, this time I move to enter Stacy's Exhibit A79 as well.
Let A79 also be received.
Your Honor, this time may I publish Stacy's Exhibit A80?
You may.
Madam Clerk. So, Detective, could you read the information that you forwarded on to Detective Falk?
Sure. I put in the subject line, location of phone in Richmond, Texas. I said that this is the best position that we've had on the phone since it settled down in Texas. It's been turning on and off. This is a 917-744-8581 handset, which means telephone. The other handset or telephone, which is 917-744-7651, has not turned back on since being in Texas. This position was at 0233 local time.
Okay, so that's 2:33 a.m. on July 20th?
Yes, sir.
So at this point, Laura's card has just been found?
I wasn't aware of that at the time.
Okay,
But,
so
okay.
you had no idea about whether Laura's card had been found when you were
Correct.
doing this?
Yeah, I did not know.
So you're just tasked with finding where these cell phones were located?
Yes, sir.
And the information that you got back from AT&T was that the 7651 number was effectively turned off, and the 8581 number was bouncing back to this latitude and longitude?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so did you plug that latitude and longitude into a mapping program?
We did put it into Google Maps and put the lat long position in there, and it displayed where the phone was.
Okay. Your Honor, may I publish State's Exhibit 32 at this time?
You may.
And that latitude and longitude did that show up to be just outside of Houston, Texas?
Yes, sir, it did.
And did that come back to the backyard of basically a house off of Skinner Lane in Richmond, Texas?
It did.
And later did you learn that this was the house of Karen Berry?
Yes.
And across the street, does there appear to be some sort of creek?
There is.
And as part of your, I guess, trying to find where these phones were located, one of them was turned off and the other one was being turned off and on intermittently?
Correct.
And if you turn the phone off, there's no way that AT&T can track where it's located?
Right. During the 15-minute rotation, when the 15-minute hit comes on or comes through, if the signal's not received because the phone is off, then it would return a absent subscriber or unknown position.
Your Honor, may I publish State's Exhibit A79 at this time?
You may.
And Detective, this A79 you mentioned contains the phone records for both the 7651 number and the 8581 number.
Yes, sir.
And looking at this page with lines, I guess 53 on, does it indicate that this is the phone number for which the records list the information for this phone?
Correct. That's displaying the voice call detail records for 744-765.
Okay. And here on July 13th at 4:59 p.m., is that same phone call that you just found on Laura's Ackerson's phone numbers records, is that entry on this phone record as well?
It does.
Okay. And there it lists nearly a 2-minute phone call?
Correct.
And it lists the number from the originating number, which was Laura Ackerson's phone, and the terminating number, which is the 7651 number?
Yes, sir.
Okay. After you, I guess, acquired these records, or with other detectives acquired these records, and after you plotted where these cell phone towers were located to help in this investigation, did you have any other involvement in this investigation?
No, sir.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Mr. Gass, did you have questions?
Yes, I do. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hackney. Let me ask you this. I'm going to need Mr. Zellinger's help with these exhibits.
Okay.
Because we've been bouncing back and forth between telephone records. Could we put back on the screen the records for Laura's telephone number, 7252 number? Sure. Bear with me, I don't have the pointer.
Okay.
So I'll have to reference reference them by time.
Would you like the laser pointer? Or line number or time is fine as well.
Do you have the
I have a laser pointer.
red button?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's go down first to the phone call that Laura made on July 13th at 4:59 p.m. And that is the number, that call was made to telephone number 917-744-7651, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's the one that lasted for approximately 2 minutes, am I correct?
Correct.
Do you, going on down your list, would you go down to call number 1002? That is a call number that is in what I see in there, an incoming call to her cell phone number.
Yes, sir.
It's not a call that she made.
Right. It's in column D indicates that it's an incoming call from column E, which is coming from phone number 917-744-7651.
So at 6:37 p.m. on July 13th, she received an incoming call from 917-744-7651.
Correct.
That's the same number that she had called at 4:59 p.m.
Right. Yes, sir.
But she didn't answer that call, did she?
Correct.
Going on down the list, not the next one, but the one after that, a telephone call made on July 13, 2011 at 6:49 p.m. You see that one?
I do.
She is once again being called by the person who has telephone number 917 917-744-7651.
Yes, sir.
Same telephone number that had called her at 4:59 p.m.
Correct.
And she doesn't answer that call, does she?
That call was never connected. No, sir.
As
If-
I
if you-
understand your testimony, the number that appears below the 917 number, the 805 number, indicates that it rolled over to voicemail.
Right. Yes, sir.
So when she was called, when the person who had this telephone number called her at 6:37 p.m., she didn't answer, so it rolled to voicemail.
Yes.
Likewise, when that person called her at 6:49 p.m., she didn't answer, and once again, it rolled over to the voicemail.
Yes, sir. Can we go back up to the 4:59 call?
Yes, sir.
All right, 4:59. You had said a minute ago that at 4:59 she received a call from Mr. Hayes' number or Amanda Hayes' number, but it's at 4:59 it's a outgoing call from her to that number.
Right.
Just to clarify that.
Did I say she received the call?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I misstated myself. That's a call that she made to Grant Hayes, correct?
Correct.
And then at 6:39, those other two calls we were looking at, Grant Hayes called her number,
Right.
and she didn't answer, so it rolled to voicemail.
Correct.
And at 6:49, I think the same thing happened again. He called her number, but she didn't answer, so it rolled to voicemail.
Yes, sir.
Is there a way to determine what message Grant left with her when he made those calls?
Objection?
Well, sustained, you're talking about whoever the caller was.
Whoever. Is there a way to determine what the message was that was left?
No, sir. All I can do is tell you what number called her phone. Who was on the other end of that phone when making that call, I can't tell you. Or what was said in the voicemail.
Or what was said
Yeah,
in
correct.
the voicemail? Can you tell me from this record if, in fact, a voicemail was left?
No, I cannot.
Does it just not have that information, or?
It's just that it was routed to voicemail, and that's all I could tell you. I can't tell you if a message was left or who left the message or the content of the message.
Okay, thank you. If we may now go, if Mr. Zollinger, if you can help me out here, to the next exhibit, I think, which was A80, the telephone records for 917-744-7651.
A79.
If we could go up to June 13th. Now what we can do using that 917 exchange is look at some of the same phone calls that are recorded on Laura's telephone number,
Okay.
right?
Sure.
If you will, if you can scroll down to July 13th. At 4, you'll see call number 57.
Yes, sir.
That is that same telephone call. Well, no, it's not. Actually, I'm on the wrong line. Line number 58.
Okay.
That indicates that same phone call that was reflected on the earlier document, doesn't it?
Yes, sir.
A telephone call that was made at 4:59 p.m. from Laura's telephone number to the 917 exchange lasting 1 minute and 59 seconds.
Correct.
You see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, if you'll go down to the number 59, the next call that was made from that 917 exchange. You see that?
Yes, sir.
It was made to what time was that call made?
You're talking line number 59?
Yes, sir.
So appears to be 553.
And that's the next call that was made from that 917 exchange after the person using that phone had talked to Laura.
Right.
That phone call was made to area code 201-310-3595. Right?
Correct.
Have you determined who that telephone number belongs to?
No, sir.
Have you tried to determine who it belongs to?
No, sir.
You have a cell phone?
I do.
Why don't we call that number and see if we can determine who it belongs to
Objection, Your
right
Honor.
now?
Call that number today to see who it belonged to when?
Let's see who it goes to.
Today
Today,
in 2014? Is that what you're asking him to do?
yeah.
Sustained? Go to your next question.
Let me ask, well, we're going to come back to that. Let's go on down the list here. Once again, going down to call number 62, a telephone call made from that 917 exchange. To Laura's telephone number.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell from these records that, as you could from the earlier records, that call went unanswered?
Well, I could tell you it was it's hitting a tower. There's a tower being displayed in the cell. If you look at the far right columns, cell location. These are AT&T records, so they look a little bit different from what you saw in the previous T-Mobile records. But you're seeing a cell tower there, and that's because when that phone is being used to make a phone call, obviously that phone's in use. So in order for that phone to be in use, it's got to connect to a tower. And that's showing you or displaying the tower and the location that it was on when it made that phone call. and it's also showing you a 23-second duration for that call.
Which indicates that it wasn't answered.
Well, I mean, you never really know. I mean, it could have not been answered and could have gone to voicemail, and they didn't leave a message. The time starts when you hit the send button, so a lot of factors play into it, as like how many times the phone ring before it goes to voicemail. If they just listen to the message, which could be a 30-second message before they start talking and hung up before leaving a message, it's time. The timestamp there doesn't always indicate or can't tell you whether or not a message was left.
Okay, we just know the phone call was made.
Right.
And likewise, we have on these records a match to the earlier records indicating that at 6:59, I'm sorry, 6:40, number 63, at 6:49 p.m., the telephone number at the 917 exchange called Laura's number.
Correct.
And again, there was no answer.
Right.
And there's no way to know if a voice message was left.
That's correct.
Go down now to telephone call number 65. You have no telephone calls from 6:59 p.m. until 8:42 p.m., do you?
That's correct.
That cell phone has gone silent for some reason.
Right.
Do you see that at 8:42 p.m. that the 917 exchange called that 201 exchange 201-310-3595?
Correct.
That's the same number that was that 917 exchange called at 5:53 p.m., isn't it?
Yes, sir.
And that's the number that you have not been able to identify the owner of that number.
Not that I have not been able to identify it. It was, to my knowledge, there's no pertinence to that number, and I didn't look into it.
What?
I didn't attempt to identify that number.
Okay, you've never even called it, have you?
No.
To see who answered.
Not to my recollection, no, sir.
Now, go on down the list and look at call number 66. There is a call from also at 8:42 p.m. from 252 area code to the 917 exchange. See that one?
Tell me the line number again, please.
66?
Okay.
You see that number?
Yes, sir.
At line number 67, there is a call again from the 252 exchange to the 917 exchange.
Yes, sir.
Am I correct?
Correct.
Call number 68, at 11:28 p.m., there is a call from the 917 exchange, the same number that Laura had called at 4:59. The person with that telephone makes a telephone call to 252-268-6639.
Yes.
It's 25 seconds, so that probably indicates, does it not, that there was no answer.
I mean, it could. Again, there's no way of telling for sure.
No way of knowing, okay. Go to line number 69, July 13th, at 11:29 p.m. Do you see that the 917 number, the same number that Laura had called earlier that day, makes another telephone call to 252-268-6639? You see that?
Yes, sir.
And that telephone call lasted for 10 minutes and 12 seconds.
Yes.
Going down to the next telephone call we see on the 13th, on July 13th, 2011, We see a telephone call at 11:49 p.m., do we not?
We do.
That number that the 917 exchange had called at 11:29 calls him back, doesn't it?
Yes.
Objection to him.
Or
What's the time?
it calls the number back.
Calls that phone back, correct?
And that call lasts for 6 minutes and 45 seconds.
Right.
There are no more phone calls made on July 13th, 2011 from that cell phone number.
Right. After 11:49 p.m., there's no other calls made.
I'm sorry.
After 11:49 p.m. on the 13th, there are no other phone calls made until the morning of the 14th.
No more phone calls, okay. Now, I'm gonna have to look over Mr. Edwards' head. Thank you, sir. Looking on down your list, do you see call number 74?
Yes, sir.
Made the following morning, July 14th at 10:04 a.m.
I do.
The telephone with the 917 exchange calls Laura's number. So
Correct.
it lasts for 16 seconds, so that indicates that probably it went to voicemail, correct?
Probably.
Let me get you, if Mr. Zoner will be kind enough to scroll from page to page as we go through. This is a 20-page document. If we can scroll from page to page, and if you, I'm not sure what page we're on now. We're on 3 now. How many times do you see the 917 exchange dialing the 201 exchange on this page?
I'm seeing 2.
I mean, you see 2.
It's hard to see from this distance, but I see
The
1, 2,
201 exchange.
2 that I can see.
I see 2, am I wrong?
I'm telling you, I see 2. I'm not sure.
2,
I see 2.
that's what, okay, I see 2. If we could go to page 5. How many times do you see it on that page? Same number, calling the 201 exchange.
I see 3.
We can go to the next page. You see any on that page?
I looked twice. I didn't see any.
Okay. Next page. How many times do you see 917 exchange calling the 201 exchange on that page?
I count 9.
Can we go to the next page? How many on that page?
I see 6.
Let's go to the next page. How many on that page?
Five?
How many?
5?
5. And this is in a relatively short period of time. We got a lot of phone calls on this record, but it's a relatively short period of time, isn't it? Day or 2 or 2 or 3 days or something like that.
It's a lot of phone calls, yes, sir.
A lot of phone calls, isn't it?
A lot of phone calls overall on the records.
Right. Next page. How many do you see on, I think we're on page 10 if I'm not mistaken. How many times do you see it there?
Five.
And without belaboring this issue, as we go through these records, we constantly see telephone calls from the 917 telephone number that Laura had called to the 201 exchange, don't we?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you this. You've got a great deal of experience in criminal investigations, don't you?
Sure.
You previously investigated a good many drug cases, haven't you?
Yes.
How many years did you conduct drug investigations?
Been working drug cases since I've been a cop for going on 14 years, but assigned to a specific drug unit going on 10 years.
Have you been present, or have you had reason to receive information about Grant Hayes' involvement in the drug world?
No.
Are you familiar with the manner in previous investigations, the manner in which drug dealers or anyone actually familiar with the system can exchange messages on a telephone without ever leaving a record of who they've called?
Give me your question one more time. I'm not sure I understand it.
Well, you've dealt with a lot of drug dealers.
Right.
They exchange messages with each other, and they use various systems for concealing what they're doing, don't they?
Are you talking text messages or
Well, let's talk.
mobile media message?
Well, let's talk for a moment about prepaid phone calls, prepaid phones.
Okay.
You can go to the store and buy a phone,
Right.
and it has some number that's not associated with you at all, doesn't it?
It's the numbers associated to the actual telephone.
And
Right.
you can make phone calls on that telephone, and they're not going to show up on your personal telephone bill, are they?
No, they are. There's going to be, regardless of what phone you have, whether it's a prepaid phone that you buy at Walmart or a Verizon phone that's postpaid at the Verizon store, there's always going to be records that's going to show detailed records just like this, and just like the T-Mobile ones, it's going to show the number that made the call, the telephone that received the call, the tower that it was on, the duration.
Right, they're going to show up on the phone records for the phone number assigned to that phone, aren't they?
Correct.
So you may catch a drug dealer, for example, with a whole box of prepaid phones. They make 2 phone calls on one phone and throw it out the window.
They could.
And it doesn't show up on this record, does it?
If it depends on if you're looking at the receiving and phone records. If you're looking at one guy's phone records, if he uses 10 different phones, you're going to see all 10 of those calls on these phone records.
But if you go to the store and buy a prepaid phone and it gets assigned some number, and you make, let's say you make 5 calls on it, the record for that phone will, the telephone records that are produced for that phone will tell you the calls that were made on that phone number.
Correct.
And if you throw it out the window, it's gone, right?
That phone's just not used any longer once it's out the window. what I'm guessing.
And later, if you have some reason to pull the records for that phone number, you'll see what phone calls were made.
Right.
Likewise, the drug dealers use an answer phone service to exchange messages, don't they?
I'm not familiar with that method.
Well, if you call and leave, just follow me here for a second.
Okay.
You have a phone number with a certain phone number exchange assigned to it, correct?
Correct.
I have one also.
Right.
If you call my voicemail message, if I give you the code to my voicemail message, you can call my voicemail and leave a message for me, can't you?
I can.
Likewise, if I have your phone number and your code, I can call and leave a message on your phone number, can't I?
You don't need the code. You just dial my phone number, and if I don't answer it, then if it goes to voicemail, you can leave a message.
Voicemail, doesn't it?
Right.
So you and I can exchange telephone calls on telephone on numbers that may appear on the record, but the number that appears is the voicemail number, isn't it?
Say that one more time.
Okay? If I make a call to your voicemail number and leave you a message.
You're going to call my phone number, which
I
can
didn't
roll to
call your
voicemail.
number. I called your voicemail number.
To get into my voicemail, you probably have to dial my phone number and then prompt with a PIN code to get into my voicemail. But I don't know of a way that you can directly call my voicemail. There's not a phone number to my voicemail that you can directly dial from your phone to listen to my messages.
Not aware of a system by which you can dial a phone message center and leave a message under a particular phone number?
I'm not. No, sir.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
All right.
Let's use my phone number.
Okay.
Your Honor, I'm afraid that if Mr. Gaskins uses his phone to do it, it's going to be admitted into evidence.
I'm sorry?
I said I worry that if Mr. Gaskins uses his phone, that it's not going to be admitted into evidence.
It certainly is.
Can I get it back?
Tell you what, we'll have that conversation while the jury takes a break, okay? Folks who haven't heard it all, keep an open mind. Don't formally express any opinion about the guilt or innocence of the defendant or any matter in controversy. Be careful about your conduct. Follow my previous instructions. Take about a 10-minute break and come on back and we'll pick this up when you get back.